Hello, Ryan here, and welcome to Star Citizen Sunday. This is a weekly show which covers all of the news from the week just past. Be sure to subscribe if you like what you see, and let's get on with it. This week, we get more insight into all things flight and FPS. The IAE kicks off, plus Alpha 321.1 releases to live. So this week's Star Citizen Live was another follow-up on the CitizenCon panels. And this time round, it was a Q&A with members of the Life in the First Person FPS panel, followed by talking with Yogi Klatt from the Taking Flight panel. Kicking off with the FPS panel, the first question is, can you tell us more about the radar and ping scanning mechanics as they seem more like wall hacks? Now, Cloud Imperium are certainly not wanting to create the ability to see through walls, and they do need to tune the visuals slightly, as it does look like they are a little bit too strong right now. But there is going to be a charge-up time. The type of materials that the ping will get through will also be variable, so thicker walls may be blocking the pin, and they have also provided the designers with a lot of options on what they can tweak, like pierceability, the range, the signal-noise ratio, scanners versus anti-scan devices, also giving yourself away, so the stronger you ping, the more you may reveal yourself. So emissions will be important as well. Also things like decoys or jammers on armors, like components for your armor suit, they could potentially reduce your emissions so you can hide from the scans, although there will be trade-offs for doing so. They're also thinking about maybe trying the idea of light armor giving you less emissions than heavy armors and such, so there is a lot to provide balance for, and what we saw during CitizenCon was the system at its strongest to demonstrate the purpose of it. Now it does look like there is quite a lot of variables that they can use to create more choice in what we want to do based on our preferences, our skills and abilities, the mission at hand, and so much more, and then let players choose the trade-offs that they are happy with. So a lot of potential for what radars and scanners can do and be used for, and of course things like suit emissions, handheld devices and so much more. This system is going to be vast, but I suppose getting it into the game is first up. Now, next question is, any thoughts on interactions on items that are out of players' reach? Now, they do have a version of what they call internally Bluetooth, in which the player can basically interact with their mobiGlas, and this will then interact with the object that is out of reach for them. So I suppose this is a prime example of maybe being able to open our ships and hangar bay doors without having to constantly EVA over from our ship to press the button, more like a garage door with a remote control, which is certainly something we need right now. Next question, will there be physical interactions for the ship MFDs, or will they only apply to actual buttons? Now, they do have physical interactions with some UI screens like door buttons and elevator panels, but they won't for the MFDs, as partly there are too many complex interactions for them, but they are looking into potential options for this, but more importantly, they don't want to cover up the UI on the screen with your hand every time you reach out to press something, which makes sense. Shame it won't be physical, but obviously this is the difference between realism and sim. They don't want to hinder the gameplay because it needs to look real. Next question, is part of the FPS weapon rework intended to give players more choice in when to reload rather than just simply doing it automatically? Now, I don't think they truly understood this question, but they do want players to have as much control on their weapons as possible. But I do think that if you run out of ammunition and your magazine runs dry, then it will automatically reload if you press the trigger again, rather than waiting for the player to do it. That would be my guess on the direction they go with this. They are also trying to make sure that Star Citizen's FPS is as fluid and intuitive as possible and works as smoothly as possible, and that is what we're going to see coming in over the next few months as well, is a lot of things that will make it feel more like a AAA game and less like a janky alpha. Next question is, will the quick loot screen be extended to armor and undersuits at some point? And they say yes, they are working on it, and so the Persistent Universe version will allow for armor and clothing, but they did also mention that it won't allow you to have the image of yourself in the central and choose what clothing you want. The idea of the quick loot screen is that you're in a bit of a pinch, a bit of a hurry, and you want to quickly grab some extra magazines or some health, rather than spend time dressing your character. So you will be able to maybe take things quickly from a character, but you won't have the display of your character to show what they will look like when you're wearing it. That will be a separate UI screen. Now, next question was simply FPS compass, and they have an FPS compass coming. It was shown on the Navigating the Universe CitizenCon panel with the new helmet HUD UI. So once they get that converted from Squadron 42 specific to the PU specific, then it'll be in-game. Next question, are there different visions getting worked on right now? Night vision, thermal, and so forth. Now, they say that the new scopes that we got to see at CitizenCon are a step in that direction, and they are speaking with the graphics teams on what they can do. They have the filters that they need for this, so it is now possible, and it is something that they will look into. So no confirmations just yet as to when or how this will work, but they are talking about it and working out how to do it, which is definitely a big win. Next question is there still a wide variety of FPS gadgets planned? Things like breaching charges, FPS EMPs, gravity grenades, radar jammers, decoy grenades, placeable energy shields, repelling wire, jump packs, gliding packs, so on and so forth. Now, they are still working on many of these, things like deployable shields, laser trip mines that are in the PU, but just not available to the players to actually buy and use. That will happen. Flashbangs and smoke grenades and a few more are also being worked on. They say they want to nail the core FPS equipment first before moving on to some of the more crazy sci-fi gadgets. Now, I will say, do expect all of the usual stuff you will see in combat games and sci-fi games, and then some. They want it all. It is just a matter of time and resources, and they will likely even take our suggestions as well and see if they can provide those. But of course, it would definitely be great to get the basics in first. Next question is, will both the new quick access looting UI and the pouches work in tandem? Now, they say pouches will work with the new inventory screens, but not much more was said. I think they're just additional inventory space that will allow you to quick move things around or use with a normal UI screen, rather than them being a super quick access one, although that would be kind of cool. Being able to have more inventory space with your pouches that you can quickly move things between, rather than something like a backpack which will take time to interact with. Next question is, will there be magazine bullet repacking? Now, this internally is called ammo repooling and was mentioned during the quick inventory demonstration that it is already in the works, and you will be able to use this while in the looting screen, but also while in game. So if you are holding a weapon, you will be able to press the sort of repool key and it will do it for you automatically, but they're still balancing out how long it should take. Next question, in regards to the slider mechanic, how do you intend to mitigate hitbox abuse by rapidly crouching and uncrouching? Now, they did say that they are very excited about exploring inertia a lot more, as this will allow them to blend between situations without traditional transition animations, which is what is often used to abuse these systems. But using inertia, they can tweak the timings. They can also adjust things like stamina punishment for overusing the slide. You also can't fire while entering a slide, so it is being intended as more of a get-to-cover tactic, as they are aware of how arcadey sliding is in games, but they want it to be a function that helps the player get to cover more than anything else. So I'm personally okay with sliding if they use it as this get into cover, like dive into cover because you are being shot at or you've been caught off guard. I certainly don't want this COD style sliding all over the place, so I'm very happy to hear that their intentions are the same. Now, the next question was in regards to the time to kill updates, how they've increased the time to kill in FPS combat. Now, in the persistent universe, they have been tweaking the combat experience with each patch, and if you are in PvP, you can take even more shots than you could previously. But they want to increase the time to kill to make the experience that is fair and engaging for both PvE and PvP. Now, they go on to mention how they are aware that Star Citizen is a long-winded game in which it can take a long while to get prepared and set up and to where you're going, and then, you could immediately step off a ship and get killed by someone just hiding in a corner somewhere, which they say doesn't feel fun or fair. But these changes are the first iteration to address and balance this, and they will continue to balance the change from patch to patch based on our feedback. Also, they want to tie into the injuries system a lot more, so as a cost to increased health or the ability to take more damage, you get more injuries as a result, so death is just not the only outcome. Now this, they say, is going to be an ongoing thing with the numbers, as it is not just a simple tweak, and they have to take a lot of feedback to get it right. Now, I personally feel like this is going to be a very difficult thing to balance, and I do suspect that as time goes on and other systems come online, like further medical advancements, they will address it further down the line as well. I personally didn't like the idea or the sound of them just increasing the time to kill, and rather tie it into the armor that you're wearing, which might need to wait for something like the Maelstrom system if they are applying that to FPS armors, as it should still be a shot to the head if you're not wearing a helmet is an instant kill in my opinion. So physically wearing gear to protect yourself in some way would be imperative. But we will see how this goes, and I'm sure things will get balanced to meet that happy medium. I do like the idea though of more injuries being a thing, as this does lend nicely into using and advancing the medical profession more and encouraging the use of medics or providing them with more gameplay. So I get it's not a straightforward, people can take more damage, there are a lot of other variables to it, and with our feedback I'm sure they will meet that middle ground. Now finally, from the team before they left, they said that they are currently exploring whether equipment worn by players should mitigate damage taken from bullets. For example, if you're wearing a magazine on your chest and a bullet hits that magazine, currently you don't take damage as it hit the magazine and not you. So they are going to be trialing the opposite of this, it sounds, where both you and the magazine will take damage. Now I might be wrong here, but that sounds a little backwards, or it is more that in some cases you will take some damage, just not a full round of damage, but more of a reduced damage. Or are they saying that maybe magazines worn by players just won't protect you at all? I don't know. I don't like the idea, and it feels like I say, like they're going backwards, but we will see how this goes. But what he said doesn't really make much sense to me. I do really hope that they use the Maelstrom physical damage system for FPS armors and items, as that would obviously be ideal, but we are yet to get confirmation on that. Now, the second part of this Star Citizen Live was with Yogi Klatt talking about the Taking Flight panel, with the first question being, with the new atmospheric changes to flight, how long on average will a ship be capable of hovering before the thrusters overheat versus those with VTOL thrusters? Now, he says he can't say exactly how long, but the VTOLs will obviously be more capable, but they do need to ensure that even ships without VTOL thrusters can still hover long enough to enable the ships to land and take off, which of course makes sense. What I think the changes, or the big changes will be, is that this will stop ships from just sitting in the air and nosing down to simply shoot at players in front of them. You will have to continuously maintain a vector or a balance so you don't steer off and then engage atmospheric flight again. Of course, normal thrusters or maneuvering thrusters that are not intended for VTOL will overheat quicker than VTOL thrusters themselves. But as I say, he doesn't know the timings yet, and I'm sure there will be a few variables to this as well, like planetary atmosphere, heat, and so forth. Next question is, will we see more co-pilot actions that will assist the pilot? Now, he says that they are looking into changes to allow different weapons to be allocated to the various operator seats, like giving the forward-facing gimbaled weapons on the Cutlass to the co-pilot to operate, but he doesn't really go into it much deeper than this. I personally think there will be a lot of other things for the co-pilot to do, like handling communications between the pilot and the other crew members, or the captain, or other ships in your fleet, assistance in navigation, or the onboard systems like the resource network. I actually think the co-pilot will eventually have a lot to do, and will be very handy in all of these situations. Obviously this will depend on the ship in question, but I think having a co-pilot to assist the pilot so the pilot can just focus on flying will actually be very important and give you a much better upper hand against someone without a co-pilot. Next question is, what is the current backlog of ships needed to be converted to use master modes? Now, he says all of them, but they won't be doing all the changes all in one go. They will start with the speed tunings, then the handling changes, moving them to archetypes, so light fighters, medium fighters, interceptors, and so forth. Then they will move on to the individual differences for all the ships. So it is a multiple tier thing that will take some time to roll out, and I guess we will start to see and feel the changes in bulk quite quickly, but the finished version will take a while to get to. Next question is, how much testing has been done on industrial ships when it comes to master modes? Now, all the ships will all play by the same rule set, and they have done a little testing with ships like the Constellation, but the bigger the ship, the more unique they are, so they haven't tested them too much. but he did say for combat, fighters will not have an easy time around larger ships, and there's more about that kind of thing later on in this section. Now, I think the question was really how well will these industrial ships fly in atmosphere, more than specifically combat, which I suspect many will struggle somewhat compared to those that are aerodynamic. So maintaining a flight path so that the ship doesn't stall will be quite important, but balancing and tuning will play a big part in this to get it feeling right, and again, more will be said later on. Next question, how will ships without main thrusters be affected by master modes? And he says certain alien ships will feel quite unique, but in regards to the combat balance and gameplay, it won't just be about maneuverability. The shape also affects the ship, giving more or less cross-section to get hit, and a lot of the balancing will be ongoing and likely not right the first time, but will require a lot of feedback. Now, I think again they were more asking about flight in atmosphere from the various ships, as when it comes to combat alone, all ships are going to be affected by the same variables. Next question, have you thought about how master modes will affect the larger ships like the Hammerhead, Polaris, and so forth? Now, he says this, again, the same rules will apply with navigation versus SCM mode and what you plan to do by either fighting or not, but the intention is for larger ships to not be vulnerable like they are now. So, for example, 6 light fighters should not be able to do enough damage to take down a Hammerhead unless they have specialized equipment to do so. So what he is saying here, I suspect, is ships have specific roles that they are tailored to. Light fighters being intended to take on other light fighters or medium fighters, not larger ships, as their weapons will just not be enough to cause enough damage, especially once the Maelstrom system rolls out. Whereas if a ship has equipped weapons or items designed to cause damage to the bigger ships, then those bigger ships will need to worry. Master Modes is intended to ensure combat stays closer together and that it is exciting. And they did point out that there are many things in the works for ships right now that will impact combat and other aspects of all ships and vehicles. Master Modes obviously being one system, the Resource Network another system, the Maelstrom system having a huge impact in the future on everything, including combat of course. So do pay no attention to how combat is in game right now, as it is all being turned on its head. Now the next question is, when armor is implemented, is the intention for it to prevent all damage below a certain threshold, or more like a percentage reduction? Now he says long-term design is more akin to taking a pistol and shooting at a tank, so it won't do anything. So taking an anti-fighter weapon and attacking a large ship, the large ship just won't care. So it'll be somewhat similar to that. And to answer the question, they say they have no idea how it will be calculated, as they are still waiting on this system to get it into their hands. So it's more a case of figuring out the best way to do it once they get hold of the first implementation. But I'm sure, as always with most things, it'll need quite a bit to get balanced. Next question is, do you plan to make the turret gunner's experience more desirable? Now they say right now they are working on the gunnery experience for turrets. They have been working on the precision targeting system, which allows players to sort of focus on a target and zoom in, allowing them to target specific locations while reducing the fire rate. Now this doesn't currently work on turrets, so they are looking into possibly adding gimbals to turrets, which will then enable that option. And I do think that with audio changes, creating more of a realistic experience of just sitting in a turret while firing and hearing the sounds around you will certainly add to the overall experience anyway. Next question, what is the difference between armor, physicalized damage, and Maelstrom? Now, physicalized damage is the overarching system that determines the systemic physical damage of every material in game. Maelstrom is the destruction part of how these materials actually break up, and armor is the value of the materials and how they protect the items and more. But these all make up the physical damage system. Now, Jared did actually say that they are planning on having a dedicated show in the new year, more likely around March or April time, to show off this system. So great to hear that they are planning to show this off. It's a shame it's not coming sooner, but it is such an important system that will be impacting almost all areas of the verse. So in my opinion, they can take the time they need to get it right. Next question, will quantum enforcement devices block a ship from switching into nav mode? Now, this won't stop you from switching into nav mode or to SEM mode, but it will block the speeds and quantum drive from functioning, as that is what the QED affects. So basically, your quantum drive is what unlocks the faster speeds and the ability to quantum travel, the QED will stop that device, that component, from functioning. Next question, can we get the ability to eat or drink while sat in a seat? And although Yogi couldn't answer this as it's not his purview, there is work going on to allow players to use weapons and other items like medical devices, drinks and food while sat in a seat. This work is present on the progress tracker under seated item handling, which was completed for Squadron 42 in 2020, so I don't imagine it'll be too long until we see this functionality in-game. Next question. How are ships without wings or VTOL engines expected to fly in atmosphere? Now, they will still fly. They haven't completely discussed how well they will fly, but they won't be locking out ships from that experience and making it super realistic. They will find a good balance between realism and fun, but they will also ensure that all the ships are capable of flying in atmosphere in some way, but there certainly will be a lot of strengths and weaknesses based on the design of the ship, the amount of controllable surfaces they have, and so on and so forth. Next question is, quantum boosting looks great for exploration and travel, but the shake or the camera shake seems very intense. Are they planning to reduce the camera shake at all? Now, when they demo something like they did at CitizenCon, it is always exaggerated to show its intention. They will be tweaking this until it feels right, but it is likely intended for gameplay purposes to a degree, so they will discuss whether it's something that should be able to be turned off or not. Now, personally, I do like how it feels and how it looks. If it doesn't affect the multiplayer aspect of Star Citizen, then I have no problem with them giving the option to turn it off because of accessibility and some people getting sick because of the shaking, so we will see what their decision is there. Next question is, will we be able to have an option of a higher level of zoom in this precision targeting mode for ships like the Ares? Now, they're not quite sure yet. They will see how it goes. They don't want sniper gameplay, and zooming in too much can actually impact the visual quality of the background. So they don't want to go in too far, but extra strength is up for discussion, and they may have differing operator modes which offer different strengths. This may change based on the weapons you're using, so quite a lot to work out, and there is a potential there for a bit of variation, which will hopefully lend into a bit more of player choice as well. Now, will ships like the M50 or the 100 series land like aeroplanes instead of using VTOL? Basically, ships with taxi wheels, can they use a runway? Now, Yogi would actually love this, but he doesn't expect this work in the near future. Now, all landing pads accommodate for VTOL. There are no runways yet, but with the aerodynamic system and control surface mode, you can glide and land like a real plane. So they will need to discuss this, and after Jared pushed Yogi a little bit, he did say he will create a Spectrum thread and see if it is something people want. So big thank you to Jared. I personally would love this option, and it does sound like one day it will be a thing. Now, next question. Will ammo for ship weapons ever be decoupled from the weapon itself, allowing for magazine swapping? And they say they would like this, but right now they haven't worked out how to properly do this. But long term, yes, it is something they would like to see. It could be cool if a player has to EVA or internally do a swap of a magazine, but of course this kind of change will heavily impact the current balance they're doing, but of course things can change down the line. Now, the next question is, why go to the choice towards space drag style combat instead of 6 degrees of freedom, with acceleration being the defining difference? Now, the flight model, he says, has always had a speed limit, and what they are doing here is just reducing that limit further. They did do some tests, some PvP scenarios, while turning off all the gauges to indicate the speed and acceleration, so players didn't know how fast they were going, and they all preferred slower speeds. Now, this is a bit of a 50-50 for me. I love the intention of reducing the speeds to create that visceral space combat experience, where you actually see the opponent, but I would love to have tried the more realistic example in which you have the full freedom of space, a bit like we see in The Expanse, but I think the reality of having that type of space combat and movement would be a bit of a nightmare to use, and for most, including myself somewhat, it would probably not be as fun and very difficult to handle. So I'm quite content with the direction they're going in, but I understand why people might be more inclined for a truer space combat experience. Now, the next question is, flight surfaces will not work on all planets. How do you see things working on other atmospheres unlike Earth? Now, they say thrusters will basically aid in this scenario and will compensate, and vice versa depending on the environment. And second to last question is, what is Yogi's vision for the future of large non-capital ship combat? Now, what Cloud Imperium want is that the bigger the ship, the more they will scale from dogfighting style combat to naval ship style combat. So large ships not close together but being further away, firing long-range cannons and ordnance, and the gameplay revolving around that sort of DPS appliance, using the targeting systems to hit specific locations of a ship to disable or cripple it, and then combine that with the resource network, managing your systems to keep the ship flying. Now, when it comes to maneuvering the large ships during combat, this will involve exposing the stronger faces of your ship, which has the most armor or shielding, while maintaining the optimal firing arc based on your weapon loadout and locations, while also trying to expose the opposition's weak sides. So a lot of skill and knowledge and teamwork to do this, and will be applied to this, and I feel like that'll be a lot of fun. And then when it comes to sort of sub-capital ship combat, this will heavily depend on the ship and their intentions and loadout. For example, the Hammerhead will be taking out fighters more than other similar-sized ships. The Constellation, for example, will be focusing its front-facing ability with its weapons and missiles, but the bigger the ship, the more it moves from dogfighting to naval combat, and that will scale accordingly. Now, I really like the idea of this, and seeing how this will come along, working together as a crew to maximize your ship's intention, its strengths and weaknesses, and its potential. Anyway, that was Star Citizen Live. Some great insight into what is coming along. Some of it I'm very excited about, a bit of it I'm a bit apprehensive, although I'm sure in the end, with all the testing and balancing and our feedback, it will be exactly what we want it to be. Really hope the FPS combat doesn't move too much into the arcade style and stays with the closer to simulation style, personally speaking. Of course, it is relative to each person, but we will have to help provide feedback and see how this goes. Anyway, let us move on. So also this week, Inside Star Citizen was checking out the 4 new ships and vehicles coming to the verse for 321.1, being the Gatak Sulen, the Crusader Spirit C1, and both the Tumbrel Storm light tank and anti-aircraft vehicle. Now, I won't be covering these here on Star Citizen Sunday, as I feel they each deserve their own dedicated video, so do keep your eyes out for those. The Intergalactic Aerospace Expo has officially kicked off, with Alpha 321.1 going live. I have covered the 321.1 patch features here on YouTube, which I will link in the description below should you want to learn more. But for the IAE, basically each day, various manufacturers or vehicle manufacturers present their ships, providing players the chance to rent them completely free by visiting the halls at the TOBII Expo Center on New Babbage, Microtech. The annual sale has also kicked off, where you can pretty much pick up any ship you want, so if you've missed out on one, now is your chance to buy it again. Also, Star Citizen is completely free to play, just make sure you create an account, and you can jump in after downloading the launcher without even having to spend a penny. Plus, this year there is a small companion guide which looks to update each day. Basically, click on any of the manufacturer event days on the website and scroll down until you see this PDF-style booklet, which allows you to flick through some stories and information about various things going on at the IAE. It is a great read, and I do encourage you to take a look. The roadmap was also updated, with many more 322 features getting added. I have covered the changes in a dedicated video that I will link below, should you want to check it out. Alpha 322 is certainly starting to flesh out now. And finally, the TOBII tracker is on sale at 20% off, so if you are interested in such a device, do check out the video showing it in action. Also, I have linked that below. If I have forgotten any links, do post a comment. I will try and get them up as soon as possible. But also, if you use my link, this will get you the 20% off discount, and it also provides me with a little kickback. So to those of you who have taken advantage of that offer already, thank you so much for the support, and thank you in advance if you are planning to do so. So that brings us to the end of the show. If you do enjoy my content, please consider subscribing and hitting that like button. Also, I am able to do this thanks to my very generous patrons and channel members. If you appreciate what I do and would like to help make it even better from as little as $1 a month, all of the links are provided below.